Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining our conversation this morning. I'm very much looking forward to talking to Kerry Guthrie about her personal journey and experiences in our industry, and how Go-To Skincare have navigated their packaging journey to this point. Just a little bit about myself. Nothing worse than introducing yourself, but I have 30 years experience in the packaging industry. As head of strategy at Phantm. I was lucky enough to build a soft plastics business in the UK over a 15-year period, which also included the sale of some corrugated and card packaging. I successfully exited that business in December 2018, bringing my family to Australia, and this is now home for me. So my background means I have extensive experience in packaging procurement and development. I've worked with SMEs, PLCs, startups, typically focusing on sustainable best practice and innovation, but always retaining strong commercial practical focus for the implementation of packaging in the real world. For the last decade, I've focused on the circular economy. I've developed some award-winning monomaterial packaging that supports ease of recycling and is sort of with a big focus on technical performance. I went on to win a Gold PETA Award and for sustainability, and also a World Packaging Award for innovation. As I said, there's nothing worse than talking about yourself. The embrace of principle, I do embrace the principle that technology and investment will advance packaging, and we should actively seek this out, whoever we partner with. So as you look at your supply base, this is a focus for me. I'm an AIP member. I've spoken at various industry events. I am genuinely excited for the momentum that we currently have in the packaging sector globally. I am lucky in my role at Phantm, so I get to engage with lots of motivated companies like the attendees today and Go-To Skincare. On that note, enough about me. Let's talk about Kerry. Kerry today is joining us. She is a Group Product Manager at Go-To Skincare. Kerry's early career was in advertising as an account director before going on to be CEO of Guthrie Inc., running the most rewarding of organizations for 10 years. That's right, she was a stay-at-home mum with 2 kids. Kerry joined Go-To just a few months after the brand first launched on April the 1st. She assures me this is not a joke, in 2014. And her first job was to help move the startup from the owner's basement to their warehouse and office space. So big first week for Kerry. Since then, she's been involved in almost every aspect of the business: customer service, hand delivering PR kits, packing orders during crazy launch periods, right through to all aspects of new product development. As is probably the case when you're building a business from the ground up, I'm guessing. Now working as Group Product Manager, Kerry works closely with formulation and marketing teams to develop new products from inception right the way through to delivery of finished goods. Kerry and her team are responsible for overseeing the production of in-house formulated products at various contract manufacturers. A big part of this development process, it includes the research and selection of primary and secondary packaging, which is much of what we're here to talk about today. Kerry ensures the packaging works from an aesthetic point of view, most critical in the industry sector, whilst ensuring packaging materials are compatible with the formulations. Kerry is juggling these not insignificant tasks. I'm sure our attendees will appreciate some of those challenges themselves, whilst ensuring Go-To Skincare is meeting its own and broader industry sustainable goals. Kerry's 10-year journey and steep learning curve means she has played her part in influencing and shaping Go-To Skincare's sustainability pillars and packaging vision. Kerry sees a big part of her role as always looking for the next great sustainable packaging solution. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you. That was a really nice opening.
Yeah, your bio is covering 2 decades in 2 minutes. So we did quite a good job there. Let's jump straight in. I think, tell us a little bit more about your personal journey over the last decade.
Yeah, I guess you summed it up really well. It's a very, very steep learning curve. I joke often that I feel like I've been on an MBA of skincare on the last 10 years. There is what I guess I'd like to think that what I don't know about skincare is not worth knowing, which probably isn't true, but I like to say that. And yeah, it's just been an amazing journey for me. Like so many wonderful opportunities to be part of a great brand. You know, the chance to get involved in a startup at the very beginning, when you're literally, it's all hands on deck. You're doing everything from, you know, ordering the loo roll to dropping off press kits. And as I said, you know, when we have crazy launches at the beginning and we only had, you know, 3 or 4 pick and pack staff, it really was all hands on deck. You know, Zoe would do a post and it would be boom, you know, the orders would come flooding in, and then suddenly we would have to pack, you know, 500 orders when normally it would only be 50 orders. So that was really exciting, and watching the brand grow and watching the awareness of the brand went from, I used to have to say who I worked for, the brand name, and people would just say who, and 10 years later, I'm really proud that the majority of the time now people have heard of GoTo, and love the product and love what the brand stands for, and then sometimes occasionally you have people who also know that we take our sustainability responsibilities seriously, and you know, are quite impressed by that too. So that's
just first of all, congratulations to GoTo Skincare. 10 years is a milestone for any business, and I hope you celebrated that with vigor. I'm sure you did. But
we did.
So just a little bit more about GoTo. So tell us about, obviously the brand awareness is a really interesting aspect of this, and then how sort of sustainability is sort of maybe become more prevalent and prominent in your messaging over the last 10 years. When was that transition most evident for you guys?
Well, the first 2 or 3 years was very much about making sure that we developed excellent formulations. So we actually launched with 5 products off the bat, which I think today is still one of our best. They're still our top 3 sellers. We have our Properly Clean, which is our foaming mousse cleanser. We have Face Hero, which is our #1 selling product by a long shot. And we have very useful face cream, which is a kind of daily moisturizer. They were the 3 of the first 5 products. So it was very much about developing really good quality products, really good quality ingredients, really solid formulations. In fact, because we were a D2C brand, one of the requirements that we really didn't want to have to deal with lots of returns because people were having bad reactions to the product. So one of the philosophies was that we didn't put we didn't put ingredients into the formulations that would, I don't know if I can swear, but it was to piss off your skin is the phrase. So the formulas were really solid, great from the get-go. And so that was the focus. The focus for the first 3-4 years was very much about the formulas. And then as the company evolved and the customer base grew, and the number of SKUs grew, the amount of packaging grew, the focus, and we had more time as a business and more resource to start thinking about things like that. I think it probably, our sustainability focus probably really kicked off, I think, in probably late 2019. So, that's 5 years into the business. And we had joined AIP, and we were starting to get their regular newsletters, and the one that caught our attention was a visit to a MRF, which was probably one of the best things I've ever done from a business perspective and from a personal perspective, because once you've seen a MRF and you've walked around one of those recycling facilities and you see how much rubbish people throw away, it really puts things into perspective, and it gives you a whole new sense of purpose, and that really gave us a bit of an impetus to actually try and do better. And then after that, we engaged a guy called Ralph Moyles, who's a great guy at AIP, who came and did a sustainability supply chain review. He came and spent the day with us, and he went through our warehouse. He looked at our packing. He looked at the way all of our goods came in. He looked at the way we shipped our goods to our customers. And he helped us identify a few key areas that we could focus on. And he taught us about APCO at that point. He told us about APCO. We'd never heard of APCO, so we learned about APCO and the prep tool. And yeah, I guess he kind of opened up our eyes and our world to the world of sustainability.
I know Ralph, met him on a number of occasions. Yeah, he's very good. And I think that appreciation of what goes on feeds that change, doesn't it, in that transition. And I think you're like many attendees probably to this call, you realize, and then it's what next and how do you transition from where you are to where you want to, and then it's trying to navigate what's the best thing. And I think some of those frameworks that APCO and people like this provide give you a good start point, because it moves you towards a compliance element, doesn't it, in terms of being compliant. You mentioned, I was having a read of your website in the sustainability section, and you mentioned the complexity of the supply chain. I just want to pick up on that. You can roll that up into sort of your sustainable packaging journey, but talk about the complexity. How has that transitioned over the last 10 years? Buying small MOQs, and then obviously as the business has grown, you've got bigger MOQs, and I guess you're more in control of the narrative around the packaging you buy. Would you like to tell us about that a little bit, please?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you're right in terms of initially, the MOQ was, and we were probably only, well, actually we had to have a very just on time strategy. So everything was, we would order, and it's awful to say, but we used to air freight quite a lot of our packaging in the early days, because we didn't really know how much we needed. We didn't have a demand planner. We have a demand planner now and an inventory manager. So back in the day, it was very much kind of finger in the air. How much packaging do we think we'll need? And then we would air freight it. So we had a phrase in the early days, which is no fly by July. And I'm very pleased to say that we don't very, very rarely air freight packaging anymore, because we've got, we now have, a 6-month safety stock kind of strategy. So we don't need to rush into ordering packaging. We consolidate our orders now. So, as I said, our forecasts are a lot more strategic, and we now, we always fill full containers. We make sure we consolidate even within, the country of origin. We're trying to make sure that the packaging all comes out of, it's not always possible to come out of the same port, but if we've got multiple orders, we'll try and bring it all in at the same time. And silly things like not polybagging everything, and our suppliers do love to polybag everything, and we still have that challenge, because and sometimes even if you tell the suppliers, please do not polybag, they will, it all arrives in polybags, and they obviously want the packaging to arrive in this pristine condition, which is what we want too, but then contract manufacturers don't like that, and I'm sure there might be a few of those on the call today, because they have to individually unwrap everything. So you've got a labor time consequence, and you've also got landfill. All those individual poly bags end up in landfill. So you've got to, and then sometimes you have to accept that there might be the odd chip or a scratch or some imperfection, and so and that's part of our journey as well with our customers, that we're trying to educate them that, sometimes that happens, and we have to accept that that's one of the consequences of trying to be more environmentally friendly. So that's just like a very small example, but quite a good one, I think.
As you've grown, have you had that ability to sort of dictate the terms of what you buy? I'm guessing when you started, it was more about what you could buy as opposed to what you wanted to buy. And also your education, 5 years down the track from the start, you've now got this agenda. Have you found when you wanted to buy recycled content and things like this, that's been easy to do from the supply chain?
Yes, definitely. I think at the very beginning, so we very first started, our first foray was into ocean waste plastic, actually.
Yep.
And that was really a really lovely philosophical idea. And you got given a QR code and you were able to print that on your packaging, and you were able to say where this piece of ocean waste plastic was even, you know, picked out of the ocean in this certain part of Indonesia, which was great. But unfortunately, I think there was issues around the quality of the ocean waste plastic and the validation of the quality. So we ended up kind of moving into the more traditional PCR, which I think just had a much more reliable supply chain of. So that was an interesting little dip. We literally dipped our foot in the ocean there. And that was a bit frustrating, but I think that's one of the learnings that I would definitely love to pass on, is that don't be afraid to take those. I mean, we're lucky, I think, because we're a small business, we can literally all get in the room. There might be 4 of us in a room, and we make the decision and we just try it. And we haven't got to, we haven't kind of got to worry too much about, having a big, we're not Nestle or Coca-Cola where we've got an enormous team that we have to run all these decisions up. So we were able to make these, and we weren't afraid to fail. It didn't work out. We'd had to take the QR code off that bit of packaging, and it took 6 months for that packaging to flush through. But yeah, that was an interesting exercise in trying something new and failing, but not being perturbed by it.
We see it a lot. Businesses do what they think is right, then eventually go, you know what, we'll write a plan about what looks right, and then we'll go with that plan. And I think it's really great to hear these learnings, and failing fast is a really good approach. Having to be brave to change it, I think, is really important as well. Look, I'm just going to I'll give you a short break for 1 minute. I've got 3 more questions when we come back. I'm just going to quickly put something out to the attendees today. If Caitlin is able to work some magic with the computer, that'd be great. Thank you, Caitlin. I definitely can't work magic with a computer. So just a brief introduction to us, literally 2 slides, 3 points a slide, guys. Excuse me. Who are we? We're a clean tech company based in Melbourne. We're a team of packaging specialists with a material science background. And we're on a mission, like you guys probably, to remove things that we don't need in our waste streams. Our waste streams must be cleaner, must be circular, and everything must have a clear end of life pathway. And I think that speaks to some of the things we've been talking about with Kerry around making sure what we place on market has somewhere to go. And that's our focus as well. And then if we just flick through, please, Caitlin, how can we help? So we help companies capture baseline packaging data. You can't manage what you can't measure. And this is a principle that we take. Benchmarking against industry best practice. How am I doing compared to the competitors? This is really important to understand how you're tracking. The data that we provide and the reports that we build prioritize what you need to change. So we're looking to maximize sustainable impact, but balance that with minimizing financial risk. So from the data that we get, we frame that against regulations, and then we can build that model for you, or help build that model for you. Our reports support modeling impact of materials and the different materials, all the things that Kerry's just described in terms of the different materials that you try over time and what that means. So from an end of life or an impact perspective, we can model system change, which speaks to new product development potentially, and reuse and reuse, which is something we do a lot in this sector, in the beauty sector. And our reports support your messaging and your reporting functions, including the APCO reporting. So this is sort of what we do, and that's enough about what we do, because I want to get back to Kerry quite quickly. And then I think we've got another slide. We were lucky enough to have Kate Forbes on as well. This is the third of our trilogy. I don't know how many there are in total, Caitlin. And this is a quote, Phantm states, and insights are invaluable, challenge our thinking and testing our assumptions. That'll be there for you to have a look at or have a listen to at some point in the future. Caitlin might tell you where that is later. And today, for any attendees to the webinar, we're offering 50% off the reports that we do. You made the effort to turn up, and we wanted to repay that in some fashion. So that's our offer to you. We'll circulate the details post the event. And I want to get back to Kerry now. I've got 3 more questions and I'm mindful of time. So that's great. Thank you. So big question, Kerry, what's the future for the beauty industry in the context of sustainable packaging? By the way, I love the language you use and this reference to simple and simpler on your messaging broadly across the website. Where do you think we're going as an industry?
Well, I mean, the beauty industry doesn't really get much of a focus, I don't think, at the moment. So it would be good to start with to actually maybe get more focus because, I mean, obviously food waste and the like contribute, a lot towards the problem we've got. But, the beauty industry as well, skincare sales have gone crazy over the last few years. There are brands popping up all the time. So I think it is important that brand owners take their responsibilities seriously when it comes to selecting the packaging and rethinking and reducing and trying to reuse as much as the packaging as they can. I think the move to, I think you've got to you've got to accept that there are current limitations within the recycling industry. And it's probably very easy for brands to say, well, it's not really recyclable and so I won't worry about it until it becomes recyclable. So I think the future for anyone thinking of starting up a beauty brand or anyone, that's already, an established brand, you need to, I guess, be future-proofing your packaging. So you are making it as recyclable as possible. So you're using materials. I mean, I think in the beauty industry, so much of the beautiful packaging is things like acrylic and, PMMA and PETG, which is beautiful, clear, very heavy, premium feeling bits of packaging, which I'm sure if you go into any beauty retailer, you know exactly, what type of packaging I'm talking about. And at the moment, that is completely not recyclable. And I don't think ever will be. So trying to come to terms with that kind of balance between, aesthetically looking, appealing, feeling like really good quality, but also, thinking about the end of life and making sure that it can be recycled needs to be a big part of the way you select your packaging.
I'll just pick up on a point you made there about the packaging. You're building packaging for a future, and I think we're not entirely sure. We're not entirely clear what the future is all of the time, and I think that's I guess you have to take that best perspective from around the world and hope that common sense and logic comes to this part of the world. It does seem to be working that way, doesn't it? In terms of Australia picking up a lot of the threads out of Europe and different parts of other parts of the world. So there is, and then you've got those frameworks like Ellen MacArthur and things like that are bringing it all together slowly. So yeah, we see a lot of trying to design for this uncertain future, but there are some guide rails there, aren't there? And you've gone down that route of recycled content across your plastics and things like this, and keeping those simple materials in market so that they stand a chance of being recycled is what I see.
Yeah,
which is just fantastic. And I think for me, that's where it's going, just keeping it simple to your narrative and your language that you use. Without giving away any secrets, industry secrets, what's next for GoTo? Have you got anything? I mean, you can tell us some industry secrets if you want for GoTo, but what's next for you guys? What does the next few years look like in terms of where you want to get to?
Well, already started the process of introducing refillable products and obviously reusing products. So we've got our Properly Clean, which is one of our best sellers, which is our cleanser. We've now got a refill pouch, which even that was quite a difficult kind of process, because historically we'd actually had problems with our pump. It leaked, or the actuator didn't pop back up. So we spent a lot of time with the supplier fixing that problem. And it was only once we actually had it fixed that we were able to then launch a refill, because we couldn't really be going out to the market with a refill pouch on a pump that failed after, 20 uses. So that's been a really big achievement, and that's proving to be a really popular type of product that customers seem to react really well to. And then we've also just recently launched a refillable jar of our moisturizer. So which again is going really well. I think moisturizer is probably a bit trickier, because it's people are maybe a bit more fickle about the moisturizers that they use, or that they might jump around different brands. So, you really need the consumer to buy into your product and then come back with the refill and just buy the refills. And then there's there is challenges around managing the inventory, because then you've got twice as, you've got 2 SKUs to manage rather than 1. So you've always got to be working out how much product of one. But so I'd say refillable, maximizing the level of PCR that we can get into our packaging, which I'm proud to say most of our plastic packaging is already at 30% PCR. Some we're trying to push it up to 100, but our peach, which is the go-to peach, is tricky and is a sensitive sole, and our PCR resin can vary from batch to batch. So sometimes the supplier is able to nail the color, and then other times you get a little bit of variation. So that can be problematic. So we have to be careful that we don't put too much PCR in. And then mono materials, I think moving towards getting as much of our pack. I mean, we've got 3 or 4 products in airless pumps, which obviously at the moment will have probably some kind of aluminium spring in there. So trying to move across to mono materials is really a key. Yep.
I think there's 2 things I'll just pick up on there. Refill, there's loads of really cool evidence around the benefits of refill from an impact perspective. So, and actually customer value as well. So refill, when we've modeled this, and we've done a number of these now, we see a lot of customer value there as well. So from a cost perspective, as well as an environmental perspective. So I think that for me would definitely be a direction of travel for your industry, which is really insightful. And yes, that move to mono material, as I said in the outset, that I'm a fan of that, and we're seeing more of those sort of single polymer type pump systems coming onto market, which is just fantastic. And they're all these things we're creating for this future that's a little bit uncertain, but I think that is the direction of travel. Look, in a minute, I'm just mindful we want to take some questions. It looks like there's some interesting questions which Caitlin will ask. Last question from me is 1 or 2 pieces of advice for either brands or individuals, maybe one of each, coming into this industry, wanting to make an impact, and what do they do on their sustainable adventure?
So I was actually talking to our formulator actually just before, and we were talking about how much stability we did in the early days. We were scared. I think we were in the early days, some of our manufacturers were a bit wary about using some of the sugar canes and the PCRs, and we were very risk averse. For us, our formulas are so important. So we ran full stability on every formula, in every form of packaging, in different levels of PCR. I think we've got about 6 incubators in our lab where we were kind of had them at different temperatures. And I can honestly say we have not seen a single bad reaction to any of the levels of PCR. So I think we kind of overdid it. So don't be kind of put yourself under too much pressure to, I don't know whether you've heard any anecdotal kind of evidence that it does, but if you're buying packaging from a respectable packaging supplier, it should be pretty good. So don't kill yourself with doing loads and loads of stability.
Yeah, I think testing is always appropriate, especially in such a sensitive market as this. Anything on food contact or skin contact. So yeah, you've got to do some, but you're right. Most polymers, if they're from stable sources, as PCR will be quite stable. So that shouldn't cause you too many issues. Yeah, that's really insightful. Kerry, that's sort of my questions. If you've got anything to add, please add it. But thank you so much. I'm guessing we've got a few questions from the chat, but I'll let Caitlin pick those up. Just a big thank you from me. Caitlin, I'll leave it with you.
Thank you so much, Kerry. That was fascinating. And to be honest, the time flew. I wish we had more time to hear from you. And I mean, I suppose we do, because we have some fantastic questions actually that have been coming through the chat. And just an invitation for anyone that hasn't had the chance to share those yet, feel free to pop those in and we'll get through all the ones we've got time for. To start off, we actually have a question that relates to some very recent news that's come from APCO. And the question is, what are your thoughts on the recent APCO review and eco-modulation fee-based structure that's coming in FY27? Is the industry ready?
I sat in on that call actually. I don't know. Like I don't know if it was just my takeaway. I know Ed and we kind of talked about it briefly last week. There wasn't too much explanation as to how it would work. My takeaway was there will be a fee and it will be, so much, and you'll get discounts if you do X, Y, and Z. And obviously a lot of it won't be applicable to us. It's things like labeling. Well, we don't label our products, and I think the colors that you use. So some of it wasn't really relevant to us. And I'm imagining as well that, in terms of how much packaging we put out there compared to maybe some of the big players, it will be fairly small. But yeah, I feel like maybe it should be sooner. I think we didn't hit the 2025 goals, and we probably need to convene a bit quicker and just get something happening sooner, I think. Would be my take.
I'll add to that, Caitlin, that I think, to go quicker would be better, even if we fail fast. But let's do something more urgently as an industry, as a sector, as a country, because eco-modulation is a complex system that they've implemented, because it's about what we place on market. But for me, going quicker would be really helpful. Yeah.
Set ourselves up for the challenge.
Yeah,
and just go for it.
And you know what? If it doesn't work, that's okay, change it. And that's what we're seeing around the world. They're trying things, it does this, doesn't work. You know what? We'll just change it. They're governments, they can do that. So it's good.
Maybe more of a bias to action would benefit, everyone in the planet.
100%.
Yeah. Thank you. I have another question from Claire in the chat, which is, how long did it take you to land on a regular packaging supplier, and how did you source them? And in fact, my new friend Beatrice has just given a thumbs up to that question as well. So that's an in-demand one.
Well, when we first started, I think the two of the founders went over to Cosmoprof, the Cosmoprof Expo in Hong Kong, and I think back in 2000, well, it would have been 2013 because we launched in 2014. So I think it was a bit hot luck to begin with. And then, but obviously as the brand has grown and we've become a lot more aware and conscious of what makes a good supplier and a reliable supplier, we've been to Cosmoprof quite a few times. We we've actually visited the factories, which I think is the amount of information and knowledge that you get from visiting factories is really important, and it's a great way to build relationships and enhance relationships. And again, as we've developed, we now have our QA manager now is very involved in the selection process of our suppliers. So we have we have a whole heap of questions around modern slavery and making sure that they comply with a lot of our ESG kind of philosophy. So yeah, and the ability to supply, being innovative, coming to us with kind of monomaterial solutions, sustainable options, making sure that it's at least on their radar as well, because a lot of suppliers are just still very much stuck in the past and aren't really thinking about the future. So yeah, just yeah.
I would totally support that. I think visiting the site, you get a real sense of what that company's about, and that feeds into everything that they do. Do they invest in good equipment? That's really important, because you want them to build the future, not the past. So you want good equipment because the materials and the challenges around the materials are different. The materials we're using in the future are different from the old ones, the tolerances and all the rest of it. So yeah, being present is a big part of procurement. It gives you a good sense and to build relationships, 100%.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember that was one of the first lessons that Ed taught me when we started working together, which is if you can go and do a site visit, if you can go and see a flow wrap machine, in operation, what you can learn from that experience far surpasses anything you can read online.
I actually just was recently in Seoul in South Korea, and I, for the first time ever, went to a glass foundry. And it was one of the most fascinating things I've ever done. And seeing how glass is made is amazing. And very hot. I walked through the door. I didn't realize they were actually going to give me a tour of the actual kind of foundry and the furnace. And I was probably about 10 meters away from the 1500-degree furnace. And it was an impressive sight. And actually glass is an interesting one, because they are using this particular factory it's a foundry that's actually it's an electric run foundry rather than obviously the fossil fuels, and it uses 60% recycled content in their glass. So which is actually really quite, by all accounts, very hard to find glass for beauty products. I mean, I think you can find it in wine and but to find a foundry that uses recycled content in glass is really quite unusual.
I've got another question which relates to something that I imagine everyone on the call would have picked up on, which is we all have funny accents. And while we all may be based in Australia, we're not all from Australia. Given you're both Brits, did you have any thoughts on the EPR scheme, or extended producer responsibility scheme, and its fee structure that's announced for commencement in the UK?
Ed, I definitely will defer to you on this one.
I'll quickly field that one. I would urge anybody on any of the attendees to have a look at it, because it's that visibility of the future. You've seen there's a fee structure now published, and it's a guide, but that's coming in 2025. So we've got a fee structure coming in 27 for eco-modulation. It will be similar. It will be similar to this one, even though the framing is different. So I would strongly urge anyone to take a look at that. And the one that there was two things that I picked up from the fee structure reading it was fiber composite, so paper and anything else are hit quite hard. So that's nearly at the low end, circa $800 a ton. So you've got to really be careful and think about what is right. And for me, that was a really interesting example of the truth is a government making decisions that they're not really maybe informed to make all of the time, but they're doing something. And I think we want APCO to move quicker and tell us. I think they should be releasing the information sooner. Businesses need to prepare for it. So that would be my take. Maybe we can put a link into that somewhere in any circulation, Caitlin, around that, so for people to have a read.
Yep, certainly. Yeah, it's worth, I think you've spoken to this earlier, but it's just worth letting everyone know that I will send out an email to everybody that's here today after the webinar and share a recording, and I can share some resources as well.
I just say as well, I think Kerry's lived here for 24 years, so I think the accent might be still a tinge of British, but it's probably unfair to lump us together. So.
Fair. I think we've got time for one last question, and it's actually a clarifier. This is from Beatrice, and it relates to something that you were talking about before we hopped into the Q&A. Were you referring to the pod for the moisturizer refillable jar using PCR?
Yes, we have a refill pod, yes. So we have a refillable jar. So that's made of PET, which is the consumer keeps, and then the pod clicks in and out, and you just buy the refill pod.
That's great. Thank you. Hopefully that's clarifying.
I noticed a question around, as I'm not very good at this, but the brand color consistency. Kerry, have you experienced anything around the consistency of color using PCRs? I'm curious or have you found that reasonably consistent?
No, color is a nightmare.
Yeah.
I would tell you that. And I don't know, there's a bit of I haven't really got to the bottom yet of whether or not it's related to PCR content. We've just gone through an exercise over the last 8 months of trying to introduce a system whereby our suppliers use spectrophotometry to measure our color, and because if you don't measure it, you can't fix it. So up until now, and it was interesting because we spoke to all of our packaging suppliers and not a single one, and we use some really well-known, big, reputable packaging suppliers, and they weren't even using spectrophotometry. They weren't using a light box. So, you know, their QC person in the factory would take the jar, look at it, get the PMS chip, look at it, yeah, looks good enough, and send it off to us. And then we recently started using our own light box, so we look at it in different light sources, and there's a word called metamerism, which is where you look at the light, the color changes depending on what light source you're looking under. So yeah, and a lot of our suppliers are not doing that, and they're obviously very, very good. The people in charge of putting in, you know, using the master batch and getting the resin the right color and making their products, but close enough isn't good enough. And unfortunately, there are a lot of suppliers out there that's their mantra. So, and the more SKUs you build, and the more substrates you use, so you know, we use glass, we use PET, HDPE, PP, and paper, and the more you use and the more recycled content you put in, apparently that can also change. It is really challenging. So yes, that journey continues, but apparently apparently peach is the hardest color to get, although I'm sure there are other brands sitting out there listening saying no, our color is really hard too. So color is really tricky.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm gonna be cheeky, and I'm gonna actually, I know I said that was the last question. I'm gonna squeak one more in because I think it's a really interesting one. I'm curious to hear your take on this. This is from M Manatak. What is your view on product take back recycling programs to recycle problematic packaging?
Yeah, I think that having them in store is critical. And we did flirt with this idea very early on. Actually, we had some meetings very early on with one of the well-known ones, and we just couldn't get the numbers to work. The amount of money that it was going to cost to collect, I don't know, whatever it would have been, 600 kilos of plastic at that time. We would have been better off paying, 100, backpackers to go to, various beaches around Australia and collect the waste. So we just couldn't make the numbers work. But I think now the more, you know, obviously it's a real shame that the way Red Cycle has gone, that's a real shame. So I hope that gets up. I hope there's a solution to that very soon, because I think that had really started to make a big difference. People were really starting to embrace that whole you know, process, and having it in the supermarket was amazing. And then obviously for beauty, Mecca is doing a great job at having its in-house recycling option. So having it in store is critical. Having it ubiquitous across wherever you live is also important. And you know, we've just got to really hope that the end, wherever it ends up, it really is getting recycled in the way that they're telling you it is. And I know in the past there's been some questions around that. So, but I'm sure, you know, as the demand just keeps growing, there will be more and more. I think that's the other thing. I think brands just need to constantly be demanding more of their suppliers, and also the kind of people that can also look at end of life solutions. And brands just need to keep the pressure on, because we want to be part of that closed system, and we want to do our bit, and we need everyone else in the system to be doing their bit as well. So yeah.
Driving behavior change is so difficult. I totally appreciate that it takes that critical mass of brands, businesses, retailers driving it, so that it starts to kind of turn the tide.
Yeah.
And no one solution either. Like, take part of a solution, but we have to have more solutions, don't we, for the materials as well. It's not the answer, it's part of the solution. So,
and I think even just things like having benches, I think the government really misses a trick at promoting. You know, park benches are all made by, you know, this park bench is made by PET collected from X, or, you know, the government could do a lot more to promote the end use, which would drive the value of the material in the first place, which would then drive more, you know, brands to use that material. So I think there are some really easy, simple solutions that could make quite a bit, you know, that, as you say, could drive real behavior change. So yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time and your energy and your thoughtfulness, and yours as well, Ed, in this conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So if it's okay with everybody, we might wrap up now. What I took away from that conversation is it can be really complicated. I mean packaging, I mean sustainability, I mean sustainable packaging. And I really like two things about GoTo that I'm picking up, both as, you know, a fan and a customer, but also from having the opportunity to listen to you, which is that your transparency, I think, demonstrates real leadership. And I love that you're focusing on keeping it simple. That's how it should be. And also, as Ed likes to say, it should be fun. It can be hard.
Well, it's funny you say keep it simple, because I can tell you there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. I did say to Ed before we started, I was really excited to do this because it's so nice to be able to talk about this, because the bandwidth that our marketing department have to talk to our consumer, it's you know, we do 2 posts a day or whatever it is, and we're in the business of selling skincare, so our customers don't really want to hear the constant, you know, sustainability stories, but there is a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't really get to talk about very much. But I think, and that's part of, you know, good brands, you know, will be doing things, lots of things behind the scenes that you may never hear of. But you know, when you are choosing, you know, whatever it is, whatever you're buying, just be a bit more mindful about the company that you're buying from, and just try and select products from brands that you think are really trying to do the right thing. Even if you don't necessarily hear about it all the time in their socials, you know, do your research, read their websites, try and find out what they're up to, and buy mindfully, for sure.
Vote with your dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, hear. Yeah, I love that, you know, that they're trying to do better and that they're transparent about it, and maybe they're not perfect, but
you know, just like GoTo, that commitment to work to transition to better.
And customers do need to also give brands a break sometimes, because we're always trying to improve, we're always striving to do better, and sometimes we fail, and sometimes it's not perfect, and don't shy away as a brand. Don't sugarcoat things, don't greenwash things, be really honest that, you know, if there is a part of this packaging that is not recyclable, trust that the brand has tried to find something that is. If they haven't, then don't kind of beat them up, and because, you know, yeah, we're a very transparent and honest brand. It's a big part of our DNA, and thankfully most of our consumers really embrace that and you know, trust that. But you know, when we do get it wrong, you know, don't give us such a hard time, and just know that we're always trying to do better.
Yeah, that's it. The court of public appeal can be harsh sometimes. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I imagine the hour flew by as quickly for you as it did for me. A huge thank you to Ed as well, and Kerry. A huge thank you to you. We're very grateful. We are going to be, as I mentioned, sharing the recording to this webinar. You can also head to the Phantm website and see recordings of our past webinars with Kate Forbes from Mecca and Dan Flynn from Thank You. You can have a look at our blog for important information about sustainable packaging, as well as our newsletter to keep up to date with any upcoming webinars. We've got one coming in October that's all about the importance of sustainability data and storytelling. As I said, you'll be hearing from me tomorrow. And thank you so much. We appreciate it.